Ladies and gentlemen, we've all felt it, haven't we? That sting when someone looks past us, when our words fall into a silence that offers no response, when our presence feels like it doesn't matter. Being ignored hurts. It's as if the world momentarily denies us, rendering us unseen, unheard, and unvalued. But what if I told you that this pain, as sharp as it feels, carries within it a hidden sign, a quiet message from life itself? The hurt of being ignored is deeply human. At our core, we long for connection, acknowledgement, and belonging. But when others fail to see us, it forces us to confront a painful truth: we've placed our sense of self in their hands. Their validation, or lack of it, dictates our worth. And so the pain arises not just from their ignorance, but from our own dependency on it. But let's pause for a moment. What does it mean when someone ignores us? Is it truly a reflection of our worth? Or could it be a reflection of them, their preoccupations, fears, or limitations? Often their intention reveals more about their inner world than about us. In their distraction, they hold up a mirror, and what we see in that mirror is not a lack within us, but a story playing out within them. And this is where the sign begins to emerge. Being ignored is a signal not of failure, but of opportunity. It calls us inward to reevaluate where we've anchored our self-worth. Have we placed it in the unsteady hands of others' opinions? Or is it time to ground ourselves in something deeper, something unshakable? This moment of being overlooked may also be life's way of redirecting us. Perhaps it's nudging us away from places or people that no longer serve our growth, toward new horizons where we can thrive authentically. Every closed door whispers of another waiting to be opened. Ultimately, the liberation lies in transcendence. When we stop seeking validation outside of ourselves, we begin to see the profound truth: our existence, as it is already whole. To be ignored does not diminish us. It simply shows us where we've misplaced our power and invites us to reclaim it. So when you feel the pain of being overlooked, don't let it define you. Instead, let it refine you. Let it guide you to see beyond the fleeting gaze of others and into the infinite worth within yourself. Thank you. The pain of being overlooked is not just about the momentary act itself. It taps into something far deeper, something primal. From infancy, we learn that acknowledgement is synonymous with care. A parent's gaze, a caregiver's touch, a loved one's response — these are all affirmations that we matter, that our presence in the world holds meaning. This early conditioning builds an internal framework where attention equates to worthiness. Thus, when we are ignored, it can feel like the ground beneath us is shifting, as though the very foundation of our self-esteem is being challenged. But why does this pain resonate so deeply? It's not simply the absence of recognition that wounds us, but the implication that accompanies it. To be ignored suggests that one's existence is inconsequential in that moment, as if the effort to engage with or acknowledge us is not worth the energy. This perceived indifference cuts sharper than outright rejection, for rejection at least acknowledges our presence, even if in a negative context. Ignorance, on the other hand, implies nullity. It is the silence that speaks louder than any word could. Yet there is an additional layer to this pain, one tied to our modern world. In an age dominated by constant connectivity and digital interaction, the act of being ignored has taken on new dimensions. A message left unanswered, a post that receives no engagement, a conversation that fades without closure. These moments of being overlooked are magnified by the immediacy and ubiquity of our communication tools. The digital silence becomes deafening, amplifying our sense of isolation. And because these interactions are often fleeting and impersonal, they leave us with little context or closure, leaving our minds to fill the gaps with assumptions and insecurities. But there's something profound to consider. This pain is not merely a result of the external act of being ignored. It also stems from our own inner relationship with ourselves. Why does the acknowledgement of others hold so much power over us? Why do we equate attention with worth? Part of the answer lies in how we have been conditioned by society to measure our value. Success, beauty, intelligence, likability — all these qualities are often judged by how others perceive us. This external validation becomes a currency for our self-worth, one that we are constantly seeking to earn. However, the reliance on external validation makes us vulnerable. It places our sense of self in the hands of others, whose actions and attentions are beyond our control. When they fail to see us, It's not only their indifference that wounds us, but our own misplaced dependency on their acknowledgement. In a sense, the pain of being ignored reveals to us an internal misalignment, a disconnect between where we derive our worth and where it truly resides. This realization, while uncomfortable, carries within it the seeds of transformation. It is only through feeling the sting of invisibility that we are prompted to examine our own need for visibility. What is it that we are truly seeking when we long for recognition? Is it approval, belonging, or simply the reassurance that we matter? And most importantly, can we find these things within ourselves instead of searching for them in others? When someone ignores us, it may seem like a form of rejection, but it is often not personal. People are consumed by their own lives, their own struggles, distractions, and preoccupations. Their inattention often reflects their internal state rather than a judgment of our worth. Yet our minds rarely interpret it this way. Instead, we take it personally, internalizing their actions as evidence of our inadequacy. This misunderstanding only deepens the wound, reinforcing the cycle of seeking validation from the very source that denied it. Through this lens, the pain of being ignored becomes a complex interplay of external actions and internal responses. It is not just about others failing to see us, it is about how we see ourselves in the absence of their acknowledgement. It is an emotional echo of our deeper fears and vulnerabilities, a mirror that reflects our own insecurities and unmet needs. This is why the pain feels so raw, and why it lingers. It is not merely the act of being overlooked, but the internal narrative it awakens within us. When others ignore us, it feels intensely personal, as though their disregard is a direct commentary on our worth or relevance. The sting of being overlooked strikes at the heart of our need for connection, and it can trigger a cascade of self-doubt. Yet, if we take a step back and examine the dynamics more deeply, we begin to see that their actions or inactions are rarely about us. Instead, they are a reflection of their internal state, shaped by their thoughts, emotions, and priorities in that moment. Imagine for a moment the complexity of the human mind. Each person carries within the world of distractions, fears, ambitions, and insecurities. These inner landscapes shape how they perceive and interact with the world around them. When someone fails to acknowledge us, it often has little to do with us, and far more to do with what is occupying their attention. Perhaps they are consumed by a pressing deadline, preoccupied with personal worries, or simply caught in the endless loops of their thoughts. Their ignorance is not a reflection of our value, but a mirror of their inner chaos or focus. To understand this better, consider how often you too have unintentionally ignored someone. Perhaps you were rushing to meet a commitment, lost in thought, or overwhelmed by your own emotions. In those moments, it wasn't that the person you overlooked lacked importance. Rather, your attention was consumed elsewhere. If this is true for you, it is equally true for others. The world does not revolve around us, not because we are unworthy, but because everyone is navigating their own unique challenges and preoccupations. This realization is not always easy to accept, especially when we are in the throes of emotional pain. Being ignored feels like an affront, because we instinctively interpret it as intentional. The human mind, ever vigilant for threats, often jumps to conclusions that amplify our insecurities. If someone doesn't respond to a message, we assume they don't care. If they walk past us without acknowledgement, we think they are dismissing us. These interpretations are rarely accurate, yet they shape our emotional response. The truth is far more nuanced. Their inattention is usually an expression of their own mental state, not a deliberate slight against us. There is also a societal dimension to consider. We live in a world where attention has become a form of currency, something that feels increasingly scarce in the age of constant distraction. People's focus is fragmented across countless demands: work, relationships, social media, personal aspirations. In such an environment, it is not uncommon for individuals to fail to fully engage with those around them. This lack of attention is not a judgment of worth, but a symptom of a world that pulls people in too many directions at once. Yet even when we intellectually understand this, the emotional impact of being ignored remains. Why? Because the act of being overlooked stirs something deep within us, awakening fears of invisibility and irrelevance. It is here that the mirror metaphor becomes particularly powerful. When someone ignores us, their actions or lack thereof reflect back to us our own insecurities and unmet needs. We project our fears onto their behavior, interpreting their indifference as validation of our worst doubts about ourselves. For example, if we harbor a belief that we are not interesting or likable, being ignored reinforces that belief, even if it is untrue. The other person's actions become a confirmation of the story we already tell ourselves. In this way, their behavior is less about them and more about the narrative we have constructed in our minds. The mirror they hold up does not reflect reality, but rather our perception of it, colored by our fears and insecurities. This mirror effect is both challenging and transformative. On one hand, it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how much we rely on external validation. On the other hand, it offers us an opportunity to grow. When we recognize that being ignored is not necessarily about us, we can begin to disentangle our self-worth from the actions of others. This shift in perspective allows us to see their inattention for what it is, a reflection of their world, not a measure of our value. Understanding this dynamic also fosters compassion. When we see others' ignorance as a product of their inner struggles or distractions, we are less likely to take it personally and more likely to empathize with them. We begin to realize that their actions are not malicious but simply human. They are navigating the same complexities of life that we are, often imperfectly. The mirror of ignorance, then, becomes a tool for self-awareness. It invites us to look inward and ask why we react so strongly to being overlooked. What unmet needs or fears are being triggered? How can we address these within ourselves rather than seeking resolution from others? These questions, while difficult, lead us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and a greater resilience in the face of indifference. By shifting our focus away from the actions of others and toward our own responses, we reclaim our power. We stop allowing their behavior to dictate our sense of self and instead ground our worth in something more stable, our intrinsic value as human beings. This journey is not easy, but it is profoundly liberating. It allows us to move through life with a greater sense of inner peace, even in the face of external disregard. When someone ignores us, it can feel like a personal affront, a denial of our presence and worth. The experience often stirs deep emotional pain and confusion, leaving us questioning our value and place in the world. Yet, if we look closer, this act of being overlooked holds a profound invitation, an opportunity to examine ourselves and our relationships with those around us. It calls us to turn inward, to explore where we seek validation, and to uncover the roots of our reliance on external acknowledgement. Self-awareness begins with recognizing the emotional response triggered by being ignored. The sting of disregard often has less to do with the act itself and more to do with the story we tell ourselves about it. When someone fails to acknowledge us, we may interpret their silence as a statement about our worth or significance. These interpretations are shaped by past experiences, internalized insecurities, and long-held beliefs about ourselves. For many, the act of being ignored awakens feelings of inadequacy, echoing times in their lives when they felt unseen or undervalued. To understand this dynamic, it is essential to explore where we have placed our sense of worth. From an early age, we are conditioned to seek approval and validation from external sources. Praise from parents, grades from teachers, acceptance from peers, these external markers of success become intertwined with our sense of identity. Over time, we come to equate acknowledgement with worthiness. The smile of approval, the nod of recognition, the kind word of affirmation, all these external gestures reinforce our belief that we matter. However, this reliance on external validation creates a fragile foundation for self-worth. When acknowledgement is present, we feel valued and secure. But when it is absent, we are left questioning ourselves. Being ignored challenges this framework, forcing us to confront the unsettling reality of basing our sense of self on factors beyond our control. It is a moment of reckoning, one that reveals the extent to which we have outsourced our validation to others. This realization, though uncomfortable, is also an opportunity for growth. When we are ignored, we are given a chance to examine the sources of our self-worth and to consider whether they are truly serving us. Are we placing too much weight on the opinions and actions of others? Are we seeking validation in places where it may never come? And most importantly, are we neglecting the one source of validation that is always within our reach, our own? Turning inward requires courage and honesty. It involves acknowledging the ways in which we have sought recognition from others and questioning whether those efforts have brought us fulfillment. For many, the act of being ignored reveals a pattern of seeking approval from people or situations that are unlikely to provide it. This pattern, if left unchecked, can lead to a cycle of frustration and disappointment, as we repeatedly look for acknowledgement in places where it is not forthcoming. At the heart of this process is the recognition that self-worth cannot be truly sustained by external sources. While the approval of others may bring temporary satisfaction, it is inherently fleeting and conditional. True self-worth arises from within, from a deep understanding of our intrinsic value as individuals. It is a foundation that remains steady regardless of whether others choose to see or acknowledge us. Cultivating this inner foundation is not an easy task. It requires us to confront the parts of ourselves that feel unworthy or inadequate, to challenge the beliefs that have kept us tied to external validation. It also requires us to practice self-compassion, to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we often seek from others. As we develop this inner awareness, we begin to see the act of being ignored in a new light. Rather than viewing it as a rejection or a slight, we come to understand it as a reflection of the other person's priorities, preoccupations, or limitations. Their actions or lack of them are not about us, but about them. This shift in perspective allows us to release the grip of self-doubt and to approach the situation with greater equanimity. Self-awareness also involves examining the dynamics of our relationships. Being ignored can serve as a signal to reevaluate the connections we have with others and the expectations we bring into those relationships. Are we seeking acknowledgement from people who are unable or unwilling to provide it? Are we placing our sense of self-worth in the hands of those who do not value us in the way we deserve? These questions, though difficult, can lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our relationships. This inward journey is not about denying the pain of being ignored. Rather, it is about using that pain as a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. It is about recognizing the ways in which we have allowed external factors to dictate our sense of self and reclaiming the power to define our worth from within. By turning inward, we open ourselves to the possibility of finding a source of validation that is unshakable, one that does not rely on the fleeting attention of others. This process is not about isolating ourselves from the world, but about cultivating a sense of self that is resilient and whole, one that can withstand the ebbs and flows of human interaction. It is a journey of self-discovery, one that begins with the sting of being ignored, but ultimately leads to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. When we experience being ignored, it often feels like a door closing, a rejection of our presence or efforts. But what if this moment isn't an ending? What if it is instead a sign, a quiet nudge from life urging us to shift direction? Often being overlooked or disregarded is not a reflection of our inadequacy, but a signal that something in our current path is misaligned. It is an opportunity for recalibration, a chance to reassess where we are and where we are headed. Life has a way of communicating with us, though its language is subtle and easily misunderstood. When we encounter obstacles, silence or indifference, our first instinct is to resist or lament. We view these moments as setbacks, disruptions to the plans we've laid out for ourselves. But these experiences often carry within them an implicit wisdom, a message that our current approach may no longer serve us. Being ignored can act as a catalyst, prompting us to question whether we are pursuing relationships, goals, or environments that truly resonate with who we are. Consider how often we find ourselves clinging to situations or people out of habit, obligation, or fear of change. We invest our time and energy into relationships that no longer nurture us, workplaces that stifle our growth, or pursuits that no longer ignite our passion. In these moments, being ignored can serve as a wake-up call, a reminder that it might be time to let go and explore new possibilities. The absence of acknowledgement from others forces us to confront whether we are aligning ourselves with what genuinely fulfills us or simply seeking validation in spaces that cannot provide it. The pain of being overlooked is often rooted in our attachment to expectations. We expect certain outcomes from our efforts, certain reactions from those around us. And when those expectations go unmet, we feel disheartened. But within this disappointment lies a question: why do we seek acknowledgement from these particular sources? Are they truly the ones capable of appreciating our value, or are we placing our efforts in places where they are unlikely to be received? Sometimes life uses silence to guide us away from situations that are no longer meant for us. When a relationship begins to fade, when an idea fails to gain traction, or when our contributions go unnoticed, it may be a sign that we are being redirected towards something more aligned with our growth and potential. This is not to suggest that we should abandon every endeavor that does not yield immediate results, but rather that we should be mindful of whether we are expending energy in directions that align with our true aspirations. Recalibration often begins with self-reflection. When we feel ignored or overlooked, it is helpful to step back and evaluate the situation from a broader perspective. What is this experience trying to teach us? Are we holding on to something that no longer serves us out of fear of the unknown? Are we seeking validation in spaces that cannot provide it? These questions, though difficult, can help us identify areas of our lives that are out of sync with our deeper values and desires. Being ignored also provides an opportunity to explore new paths and connections. It is often in the moments when we feel unseen or unheard that we are most open to change. The absence of external validation can free us from the need to conform to others' expectations, allowing us to pursue what truly matters to us. This shift in perspective transforms being ignored from a source of pain into a catalyst for growth, a reminder that we are not bound by the limitations of others' perceptions. Moreover, the act of recalibration often reveals strengths and resources we may have overlooked. When we are no longer fixated on gaining acknowledgement from others, we can redirect our energy toward discovering our own capabilities and exploring new opportunities. This process requires courage and self-trust, as it often involves venturing into uncharted territory. But it is through this exploration that we uncover new dimensions of ourselves and our potential. Being ignored can also highlight the need to surround ourselves with people and environments that genuinely appreciate and support us. It serves as a reminder to seek connections that are reciprocal and nourishing, rather than one-sided or conditional. When we find ourselves in spaces where our efforts are not valued, it may be a sign to seek out new communities, relationships, or endeavors that align more closely with our values and aspirations. This process of redirection is not always comfortable. Letting go of familiar paths and relationships can be difficult, even when we know they are no longer serving us. But it is in this letting go that we create space for new possibilities to emerge. Being ignored, then, is not merely an ending but a transition, a moment of recalibration that allows us to align more closely with our true selves. It is a reminder that our worth is not defined by others' recognition, but by our own capacity to grow, adapt, and pursue what truly matters. Through this lens, the experience of being ignored takes on a new meaning. It becomes less about rejection and more about redirection, a subtle yet powerful nudge from life to reassess, realign, and move forward with greater clarity and purpose. This reframing transforms the pain of being overlooked into an opportunity for growth, a chance to step into a more authentic and fulfilling path. When someone ignores you, the initial response is often an emotional one, a feeling of hurt, confusion, or even anger. The mind, ever eager to interpret events, begins to spin stories. It questions what you did wrong, why you weren't good enough, or what you could have done differently to earn their attention. These thoughts, left unchecked, can lead to a cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. However, what if the act of being ignored wasn't a critique of your worth, but a profound opportunity for growth? What if it was an invitation to strengthen your resilience and build an unshakable sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on external validation? The foundation of resilience lies in understanding that not everyone's actions or lack thereof are due. People's behavior often stems from their own struggles, distractions, or priorities. They may fail to acknowledge you because they are preoccupied with their challenges, not because you lack value. Recognizing this truth can be liberating. It allows you to step back and see the situation for what it is, a reflection of their world, not a measure of your worth. However, building resilience isn't just about understanding others. It's also about turning inward and cultivating a stronger relationship with yourself. This process begins with self-awareness. When you feel ignored, what emotions arise? Is it sadness, frustration, or a sense of rejection? By naming these emotions and understanding their origins, you take the first step toward reclaiming your power. Often these feelings are tied to past experiences where you felt unseen or unimportant, moments that left a lasting impression on how you perceive yourself. Identifying these connections helps you recognize that the pain of being ignored is not just about the present moment, but also about unresolved wounds from the past. Once you've gained awareness, the next step is self-compassion. It's easy to be harsh on yourself when you feel disregarded, to internalize the experience as a reflection of your shortcomings. But this only deepens the pain. Instead, try treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a friend. Remind yourself that everyone experiences moments of being overlooked, and that it doesn't diminish their value or yours. Self-compassion is not about ignoring the hurt, but about soothing it, about reminding yourself that your worth is inherent and not contingent on others' recognition. Resilience also involves shifting your focus from external validation to internal validation. This is perhaps one of the most challenging aspects of growth, because it requires a fundamental change in how you measure your value. Society often teaches us to seek approval from others, to gauge our success by their applause or acknowledgement. But this leaves us vulnerable, as it places our sense of self-worth in the hands of people whose attention is fleeting and unpredictable. True resilience comes from building an internal foundation of worth, one that is rooted in your values, your passions, and your understanding of who you are. To cultivate this inner foundation, start by celebrating your achievements, no matter how small, and acknowledging your strengths. Reflect on what makes you unique, the qualities, skills, and experiences that define you. Write them down, affirm them, and revisit them often, especially in moments of doubt. The more you connect with your intrinsic value, the less reliant you become on others to affirm it for you. Another crucial aspect of resilience is learning to set boundaries not just with others, but also with yourself. When someone ignores you, it's tempting to chase their attention or overanalyze the situation. But this only depletes your energy and reinforces the idea that their recognition is essential. Instead, set a boundary with yourself to not dwell excessively on their actions. Redirect your energy toward pursuits that bring you joy and fulfillment, activities that remind you of your worth and capabilities. Building resilience also involves embracing discomfort. The pain of being ignored is real, and it's natural to want to avoid it. But avoiding discomfort only prolongs the healing process. Instead, sit with your feelings and allow yourself to fully experience them. This doesn't mean wallowing in self-pity, but rather acknowledging your emotions as valid and giving yourself the space to process them. Over time, this practice strengthens your emotional endurance, allowing you to navigate future challenges with greater ease. Finally, resilience is about perspective. Being ignored can feel like a personal failure, but it's often just a momentary occurrence in the vast tapestry of life. People's attention is fickle, and their inattention doesn't negate your value. By zooming out and viewing the situation in the context of your larger journey, you can see it as a temporary experience rather than a defining one. This broader perspective helps you maintain a sense of balance and prevents you from being overly affected by the actions or inactions of others. The path to resilience is not linear. There will be moments of doubt, moments when the sting of being ignored feels overwhelming. But each of these moments is an opportunity to grow stronger, to deepen your understanding of yourself, and to cultivate a sense of self-worth that is unshakable. It is a journey of transformation, one that begins with pain, but leads to empowerment. Resilience is not about becoming immune to hurt, but about learning to navigate it with grace and strength, about standing firm in your worth even when the world around you falters.